Star Wars has always been political, whether we choose to see it or not. Ever since the original trilogy and the inception of Star Wars, it has always been closely linked to American politics as part of George Lucas's vision. While Star Wars may have been initially designed for children, George Lucas did have something more in mind for the more political-minded ones as well. So here is the history of politics in Star Wars. The original trilogy, which was released in 1977, is filled with political narratives and criticisms if you take a closer look. Throughout the film, we followed the story of a group of freedom fighters in their struggle against authoritarianism and fascism. It is no coincidence that the costume design and artwork of the Empire are designed to invoke the imagery reminiscent of the Nazis in World War II, some 30-odd years earlier. The original trilogy and Star Wars as a whole was built around the notion of hope, and against the backdrop of the Cold War, it's not hard to see why. The reason why the original trilogy resonates with American audiences in particular is because the trilogy acts as a conduit and mirror for the potential future. Throughout the Cold War, a very common political narrative that American audiences were familiar with is the notion of fighting back against authoritarianism, and coupled with the heightened fears of nuclear war, Star Wars provided a sense of escapist fun while still anchored subtly in real-world issues that resonated with audiences. We then move on to the prequel trilogy, which out of all three trilogies had the most to say in terms of real-world politics. Within the prequel era, the commentary on politics was much more overt and weaved into the main plot. Throughout the prequel trilogy, we see elements of corruption, bureaucracy, and the Galactic Republic's involvement in a never-ending war, and it's no surprise that this is mirrored with ongoing events of the time. In many ways, the never-ending battles of the Clone Wars represent the never-ending conflict in the Middle East, and the political corruption, bureaucracy, and a waning democracy reflects the state of American politics throughout this era. The prequel trilogy equally puts on an emphasis on lobbyists and big corporations that plague our everyday politics, which is also the cause that ultimately undermines the democracy of the Galactic Republic. Star Wars The Clone Wars is no exception either. The animated show contains numerous instances of political commentary. The Ryloth arc in particular showcases the stifling bureaucracy of the Republic and the corruption that is festering within. During this arc, urgent supplies are needed to provide relief to the local population, and while ultimately successful, the struggle to make the mission a success ultimately proves costly. It also illustrates how the stifling bureaucracy and corruption prevents these relief measures from getting through, which again build on top of the political commentary already established in the prequel trilogy. What about the sequel trilogy? What are the political undertones that characterize the sequel trilogy? The sequel trilogy continues to develop and build on the political undertones of both trilogies. In connection with the original trilogy, there is a continuation of a fight against fascism and authoritarianism, stressing the continued importance of safeguarding democracy and the need for vigilance, lest there be damning consequences. This is also most explicit in the rise of the First Order, and the subsequent destruction of Hosnian Prime, the heart of the New Republic. Much like the prequel trilogy, the sequel trilogy continues its criticism of politics and more specifically war profiteering. The literal manifestation of this criticism is represented in the character DJ, an opportunist and war profiteer that benefits off the continuation of endless war. As DJ explains, those who sell arms and equipment to the resistance are the same people who sell to the First Order. The entire Canto Bight scene reminds of the super rich that are numb to the day-to-day realities and suffering of the common people. While the rest of the galaxy burns in terror, the rich and war profiteers celebrate their newfound opportunity and thrive on the suffering of others. These political narratives continue to be relevant today, as we see in the continued endless wars in the Middle East and corporations and military contractors who continue to profit over the continued chaos in the region and elsewhere in the world. Sure, there is, as in accordance with the current political climate, a stress on greater diversity and representation, but even these issues of race and sexism aren't really tackled explicitly in these films, at least not to the extent other issues were tackled in the other trilogies. And so, to say that because there are more women or people of color in these films, and therefore it is political, is fundamentally missing the point. It misses on the other issues that the sequel trilogy tackles on a much deeper level. And we see this clearly in The Mandalorian as well. While it is certainly not as obvious as the prequel trilogy, The Mandalorian still makes a distinct commentary on a failing government, in which the New Republic, withdrawn into the core and mid-rim, have forsaken everyone who lives in the Outer Rim, which allows for anti-democratic and destructive forces to continue to thrive in certain pockets of the galaxy, and allows for the Imperial remnants to continue to terrorize local populations. And to some extent, it reflects the society in which we live in today. In the political climate today, where economic opportunities are getting harder to come by and our societies seem more fractured than ever, it certainly reflects the sentiment of those who feel forsaken by those within the ever-complacent government. So, it is difficult to ask for Star Wars with an absence of any politics. From the original trilogy to The Mandalorian, politics has always been a part of Star Wars, and it continues to be. In many ways, politics is a key cornerstone to Star Wars whether we choose to see it or not. As part of George Lucas's vision, Star Wars was created as a mirror to the political realities of our world, and whether we know it or not, it is also the reason why it resonates with so many people from different walks of life. This was the history of politics in a galaxy far, far away. Let me know what you think in the comments down below, and I will see you in the next video. As always, be sure to like and subscribe for more. I am the Lost Acolyte,
and I have spoken.